Welcome to this edition of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, your president of Dale Carnegie Training Japan, and my special guest today is Moeko Suzuki, founder of StartUp Lady and Tailor Innovations. And welcome, Suzuki-san.
Hi, everyone. My name is Moeko Suzuki, and I'm a founder of StartUp Lady and Tailor Innovations. And let me talk about a little bit about myself. I was living in UK when I was in high school, and then I moved to United States. So I graduated the university from US and came back to Japan.
So when you say you went to high school in the UK, what age were you when you went to the UK?
Actually, I was 17.
17, okay. So you were doing, what, the final year of high school there, or the final 2 years of high school?
Final 2 years of high school.
And whereabouts in the UK were you?
London.
London, okay, right, so London. So here's a good question. Why did you go to the UK?
Because I was in Japanese high school for a little while, and I actually quit Japanese high school. But
so you say you're in Japanese high school for a little while. So you went through primary school, middle school in Japan,
yes.
Started high school, quit, and then went to the UK. So why did you quit Japanese high school?
Because I couldn't really see the meaning of study that I was studying. So I thought it's probably a good opportunity for me to go to the US, or UK, sorry, and then probably maybe meet some people, feel the different culture. I didn't really have maybe advanced eye like some people say, but that was my choice at the moment. So,
you know, you could have gone to Canada, you could have gone to Australia, New Zealand. There's a big range of countries offering education like that. Why the UK?
Because at that time, I've already been to Australia for a little short trip.
Okay.
Where
did you go?
When?
Where did you go?
Where? I was in Sydney.
Sydney, okay, nice.
And then United States had a little bit of unstable time at that time.
Okay.
So I thought it's not really stable.
So how many years ago are we talking now?
It was 26 years ago. 26
years ago, okay, right.
So I was trying to
count 26 years ago, what was unstable in the States? But anyway, that doesn't matter.
There was a terrorism
happened. Okay. Right.
And I thought it's probably unsafe to go there, so I decided to go to UK.
So, you know, if you're going through a typical Japanese high school, I can imagine that turning up in the UK to study 100% everything in English must have been an absolute nightmare. So how did you adjust to be able to do academic studies in English from that base?
Actually, when I'm in like an emergency state, I can do better.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So at that time, yes, my listening skill, my talking skill wasn't that great. Right. So I had to catch up everything.
Right.
That actually made me a little bit more confident and encouraged me to study.
Okay, and so you graduate from high school in the UK, and then you go straight to the US for university education, or you came back to Japan for a while?
Came back to Japan for a little bit, and then went to US university afterwards.
So why didn't you stay on in the UK and do university there?
Actually,
it's going to be a lot cheaper than America, I imagine.
Actually, it was a little bit more expensive than
was
US.
It at that time? Okay, right.
At the time, because £1 was around 200 yen.
Oh, okay.
We talk about yen. And also, US had a different culture, and I wanted to experience that.
So where did you go in the States?
States, I was living in Portland for a little while, then transferred to Missouri, which is very, very countryside.
Well, that's where Dale Carnegie is from. His family were farmers in Missouri, which is definitely countryside. So here's a good question, right?
Yes.
You got New York, you got Miami, you got LA, you got San Francisco, you got all these amazing Chicago, all these amazing cities in America. Why do you choose to go to Missouri to study at university?
There are two main points, and the first point was that you know, countryside, you can actually focus on studying a little bit more.
There's nothing else to do there.
Nothing else to do there.
Okay, good.
And second of all, I got a little bit of scholarship, which could cover 50% of my tuition. So that was a good choice for me.
So what was the university you chose in Missouri?
Where?
Which university?
Lindenwood. I think you might not know.
It's what was it called?
Lindenwood.
Lindenwood. So it was
a liberal arts.
Liberal arts college. Is it a 2-year college?
University. 4 years.
4-year college, okay, great.
University, right.
Right, so you graduate from Linden College in the States, and then what happens?
Then I came back to Japan. I was going to do MBA there, but I decided not to.
Why is that?
The reason was I came back to Japan a little while to do the company recruitment, but then I decided to stay in Japan because there was a 2011, you know what happened in
2011.
2011 was a nightmare. And I decided to stay close to my family.
Right. Is your family from Tohoku? Are they from the northern area?
No, they're from actually country, like Kanto area, which is like a...
Yes, around Tokyo.
Around Tokyo. But also my area had a little bit of damage.
Okay.
So I decided to stay close to my family. And also I wanted to come back to Japan to get Japan the better society.
Yes.
Because if I speak English in the US, maybe that's normal. That's like not really enough. But if I speak in Japan, English in Japan, that's a different story. There are a lot of people don't speak English in Japan, so maybe I can help more.
Okay, right. So did you actually go into a Japanese company going through the recruitment process to get a job? Did you actually go through that process?
Yes, I was there for 2 years. But I couldn't stand.
So when I was there, what were you doing? What was the type of business you're in?
I was doing business development in abroad, which is actually directly connected to one of the company business that I'm doing in Tailor Innovations.
So, okay, so when you say business development, what is it? Manufacturing? Is it services? What's the industry we're talking about here? What's the business?
Okay, we help...
No, I'm sorry, when you were in that Japanese company for 2 years, which you couldn't stand it, what was the actual business of that company?
So we help company to go like new emerged countries. For example, at that time there was a BRICS.
So this is for Japanese companies to invest in other countries and start up operations overseas. Exactly. So it's foreign direct investment into another country, and establish an on-the-ground business there, or some type of business there, and you're a type of, like a bit like the big Japanese trading companies. They play that role, don't they, to help companies go offshore. So your company was doing something like that?
Exactly.
Was it a big company?
It was, I actually experienced 2 companies in 2 years. And first one was not really big. Right. It was a startup. And second one was around 50 people running the company for 50 years. So it was quite a little bit bigger than the first one.
So here's a question. You know, you've come back from America, you've graduated there, you come back, your startup company is your first choice. So why did you choose to join a startup as opposed to a much bigger company?
I also applied for bigger companies before, and through the interview, I had actually 6 interviews. Right. But I really couldn't feel that it was challenging. So I thought it's better to join somewhere that could actually challenge you a little bit more and experience a little bit more than bigger companies.
And did you leave that first startup because it failed, or because you got poached or recruited for another bigger company?
Recruited.
You got recruited to go to a bigger company, right? So 50 years in establishment, 50 people, very, very solid company by the sounds of it. And you couldn't stand that one either, by the
because I couldn't stand. I mean.
So what was the problem, right? Like, you're an international person. You got great English. You're in that, interface with foreign countries and helping companies to go overseas. It seems to be very appropriate for your skill set. What was difficult for you to function in that very, I guess, 50-year established company, pretty established old-style company?
It was challenging, and it was interesting for a little while. But then I figured people working in there had not much dream.
No dreams, okay.
Well, I cannot say, they don't have any dream. Of course, they had a little bit of dream, but it wasn't like matching to what I was dreaming of. And when I asked that to them about what they want to do, most of them couldn't answer. So
they're classic salary man, salary woman workers who go to work to get paid.
I think so. I think so. There might be some different people in there, but I couldn't find it. So I decided to leave the company, do what maybe suit me better instead of changing the job. I could change the job too, but I decided to just quit and start the company.
So, okay, you give up a steady income, you give up a structure, there's a system there, and you say, okay, I'm going to start up my own company. But what do you start up? How do you work out, all right, what am I going to do? Like, what am I good at? What would be the best use of my talents? Where can I have some impact? How do you make that decision about what type of business you want to be in?
It's a little bit difficult question, but I had already the team members I was planning with about startup.
So like you're already in the process of starting it up. Okay.
For 3 years, we were talking about actually creating the platform where we can actually match the talents in international fields. But at that time, we started planning in 2011 when I came back.
Right.
And at that time, that kind of platform wasn't existed.
Right.
So we thought it's an opportunity to make that kind of platform where we could actually evaluate each other's talents and actually make a use of the skills for people who are probably in the world not really showing the talents or not really having the proper job, but they have talents.
So these other people in the group,
right?
I mean, how did you find them? You know, you've come back from the States, so, and then you got 2011 with, you know, Tohoku disaster.
Right.
How do you locate these other people who've got a similar concept to you?
Actually, I was very lucky because I was very social, and I was talking to a lot of people right after I came back. I probably met around 30 people a day or something.
Well, okay, hang on, 30 people a day. How do you meet 30 people a day?
Just through friends,
right,
or through community. So
right.
I really appreciate the community I was belonging to at that time.
So, but you haven't even been in Japan, you know, for so many years. What community? How do you actually create that community when not even here?
Oh, I wasn't creating. There was a community for people to get together.
Oh, okay. Right.
And I wasn't really like a learning group or anything like related to business. At that time, I was involved with a group that was learning different kinds of languages. So it was a foreign community where I could talk to a lot of people, and they introduced me to one of the person who could help.
Right. So these are international Japanese, I presume, or foreigners as well?
Foreigners as well.
Foreigners as well. So international people who have got a similar idea or concepts around, you know, life in Japan or work or whatever, that formed a basis for you to then find like-minded people to then start a business, right? So you got a core group there.
Yes, it wasn't business community at all. It was only language.
Oh, okay.
But I really appreciate.
Okay. Right. So the thing you're talking about, you know, when I hear that, I think, wow, okay, you've got all these massive bilingual recruitment companies operating here, which are huge now. I mean, back then, 2011, they're still probably pretty big, who are already doing that, basically. They're finding opportunities for companies looking for international staff. International people are looking for work. So they're doing that, matching. So why did you think there was an opportunity when that's a pretty well-covered market?
Sure. Maybe what you're talking about is company recruiting for the company.
Yes.
That is different from what we were thinking.
What were you thinking?
We were thinking of individuals appealing their talents to the market where people actually can find the talents and ask for them to work for their project.
Okay. So you're doing a direct match between person to company.
It could be it could be B2C or it could be C2C.
Yes.
But most of the target was C2C because we thought the people will have the talent in the future, and then they will use the talent to do the projects individually.
Right.
That kind of new future will come.
So you were thinking that the people you were going to be working with are going to become, like you, business founders. They're going to start up their own organizations. Is that what you were thinking?
That could be one case.
Okay.
But the other case could be they just become self-employed, start working for several companies.
Okay.
5, 6 projects
Right.
during maybe 1 month.
Right.
Then
so they
can-
contract out their talent to different companies who have that particular need.
Or
like
even
type of
individual
gig
to
economy.
Right, individual to individual too.
Right, okay, I see. Okay. So at what point did you start your actual first official company, KK or whatever it is, when you did it?
2015,
15, okay.
May.
And what did you decide ultimately that business would be?
As we were planning, we started making the platform.
Yep.
But at that time, my network was really limited
Okay.
because I was working as you say, salary man, which is businesswoman. And I wasn't really having companies or starting my own company or my own business beforehand. So I
Right.
didn't have any knowledge. I didn't have a network. I didn't have maybe money. I didn't have enough people to talk about the business plan or anything like that. So at that time was a little bit tough for me because I had to do everything from scratch, finding engineers that can actually work to
Yep.
make the final product.
Yes.
And talking with the engineer was a little bit nightmare because I didn't know how to
Okay,
talk.
Why is that?
I didn't know how to talk. Well, it's my fault that I couldn't talk to them because they have their own knowledge and understanding. And you
Yes.
have to talk to them with the words that they would understand better.
Right.
But if you don't talk with their language, it's hard for them to understand. And I
Right.
didn't know how to talk.
Right, right. So you assemble some engineers, they start building the platform. So what happens then?
Then, well, our communication failed and we couldn't make it.
Oh, okay.
So we had a first
So you had
failure.
a concept, but you couldn't find a way of explaining that to engineers in a way they could understand it to build
Exactly.
it. So the communication gap, even though it's Japanese to Japanese, it's engineer to non-engineer is the communication problem, right?
Exactly. And the person who was engineer and was in the team had to leave the team because the company he actually got the job prohibited him to work for another company.
Right, okay.
So right now, I think the world is changing, and a lot of company is allowing employees to have second job.
Right.
But that time, it was very difficult for him because he's foreigner.
Okay.
So he had to stay in Japan
Yes.
with visa.
Yes.
But if he doesn't really work for one company, he can't really sustain his life.
Yep, that's right.
And there's no choice for him to work for my company because my company didn't make earning.
Right. Right.
So
okay, that project fails. So what do you
Right.
do then?
And with the failure, I decided to just do what I can do at that time, which was business development, which I used to do at my previous companies. So I had knowledge, I had clients, and I had
Well, you
partner.
had clients. Where did these clients come from?
Oh, from partner. And the partner was doing M&A. So I was helping the business development for company who want to actually go to abroad and start a business or maybe find a way to sell their products in abroad. And we could help up to M&A, which was my
So
partner's
when you founded the company,
specialty.
you founded it by yourself or with partners?
By myself at that time.
By yourself, and then but you've got people who are around you who can
Right.
help you to source clients that you can then help them to do their market entry
Exactly.
for a foreign country.
I was very lucky in that way.
Right.
Because most of people fail without clients.
Yes, yes. So how do you convince a client to use you? Here you are, you're young, you're female, you've got very few years of business experience. Okay, you went to university in the States and you went to high school in the UK, so what, you know? So how do you convince a client to give you money to take them into a country they don't know, in a business that you don't know? How do you do that?
Of course, I could use my background skill, but yes, as you said, I had very short time experience on the fields. So I was actually going to the sale with the partner all the time, so that they had more experience, much bigger maybe knowledge and understanding of the fields, so they could talk, and I could also like support them. So that actually worked.
Okay. So what's in it for the partner? Are they getting paid to do this? Are they doing it as a volunteer? I mean, why are they bothering to do this with you?
Because they could do up to M&A, and I could do the initial parts,
Oh,
marketing.
okay. So for them, you provided the sort of follow-on service.
Exactly.
After the M&A the Japanese company is doing an M&A acquisition of a foreign company.
Right.
And then you take it over from there and help them with that part as they actually roll out the business in a foreign country. Okay, I see. So what did you call your first company?
Tailor Innovations.
Tailor Innovations. So from the very beginning, Tailor Innovations. Okay.
Right.
Right. And so the idea there, I guess, is like very tailored services for a company. Yeah?
Yes. Actually, right now we do make IoT products. IoT stands for...
IoT products. So for people who may not understand
Yes.
IoT products, what's an IoT product?
Obviously, it's Internet of Things.
Yes.
But it's really broad for a lot of people, and I had a hard time understanding too, so I understand listeners' feeling. But if you talk about IoT, one thing they can do is they connect to the internet and they do one function or two functions because it's not AI.
Right.
If you program it, it keeps doing one thing, one single thing forever. Mm-hmm. So for example, if they have a face recognition, there's a camera, they recognize your face, and as soon as they recognize your face, the door is open.
Right.
That's
okay.
IoT.
It's
IoT. One simple action.
Okay.
Right. One single action, but it's not AI.
Right.
So they only recognize a face that is registered.
So there's no learning capacity.
Learning.
It's a very, very functional
Exactly.
single act. Okay. So how did you get into that? I mean, you were talking about helping companies grow their businesses overseas. Now you're into IoT. How is the connection between those two things?
Actually, my husband is a CEO, and he is in IoT field.
Aha. Okay.
So he has a knowledge. He knows people related to IoT are in the fields before the word IoT was created.
Right.
So they're professional. They've been in the field. Some of them are for 13 years. Making electronic devices.
Right.
Or we have all the necessary people to make IoT products in our company.
Right.
So I was very lucky to have his support.
Right, yeah, he's got the connections as well. So, you start up the company, and at some point, I guess you start hiring people to help you.
Yes.
So how do you convince people to join your company? Because for a lot of foreign companies here, trying to get Japanese to join their companies is very difficult because the company name is not well known. Their parents had never heard of this company. They want them to join Hitachi or some big Japanese company they've heard of.
Yes.
And foreign companies have trouble recruiting.
Right.
And here you are, you're female, you're young, you don't have a lot of experience, you've got a very small company. How do you convince people to join you?
So actually there are two patterns. Some of the people in my company couldn't really do what they wanted to do in the previous company.
Right.
So that's the one case that we convinced them to do the project with us.
So these are Japanese people who are realizing they don't want to fit into mainstream, traditional, big Japanese company and go that path. They want something a bit different. So you are providing that difference, okay?
Exactly. And the second part, second people, I would say, are people who are working still, but willing to do something for us.
Okay, so this is like a side hustle for them.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Okay.
But they're talented, they're knowledgeable, and they are eager to work.
Okay.
So maybe some of the people who are hustle to hire some, even people full-time is really hard to hire. Maybe it's easier for them to hire someone from different company as a part-time as well.
Right, okay.
As a spot.
Right, okay. And as you said before, companies are becoming more flexible about allowing people to hold more than one job at the same time, which is sort of quite changed for Japan, I think. When did you notice that change started to happen?
I think the change happened when I started my own company. I think government started to say we probably want to increase more entrepreneurs and more foreigners to come to Japan. And then I feel like that maybe the wave happened in around 2017.
Okay.
The government tried to increase the number of workers. I'm not sure how they were stating, but then I feel like there's a lot of companies started to making other employees to work flexible way. For example, they can work maybe 20% outside of the company, or they have their own rule, but that happened. And then I think when the COVID hit, there's a lot of companies had to give up a lot of employees. And at that time, I think they actually gave some condition that they can still work for the current company, but they can also work as a side work. They can have side work in different companies.
So COVID has actually forced a change in Japanese mindset about one company for a life to, okay, we can't afford to pay you as much as we did before, but please keep some days in the week for us, and if you can find other work to keep you going until after COVID, great, do that, which is a lot of flexibility for Japan, I have to say.
Right.
Yeah.
I am not sure if this is 100% correct.
Right.
This is my just
That's
perspective.
What you feel. Okay, great.
So just.
So coming back to your staff, you know, we're themed in this podcast about leadership. So I'm guessing these are your first ever employees. You've never actually had to lead anyone before. So what were some of the challenges you found as a leader?
Actually, first of all, I feel like it's very difficult to involve people because normally when people are involved, they have to have motivation. The motivation could be money. That could be information. That could be network. That could be maybe some of the work they can do as a new experience. But they have to have some sort of motivation. And that motivation has to be matched to them. Otherwise, they don't get motivated. They're working like zombie. So you have to actually find the perfect fit for them and motivate them in a certain way where they can actually use their 100% of power to one particular thing.
So
that was very
how do you
hard.
find that way to motivate them? You mentioned you find us that way you can motivate. Great. Well, how do you do that way?
Well, it's very simple because I'm just talking about Japanese at this time. But it's very, very difficult to get honest feeling from Japanese sometimes. Unless they are very direct or unless they are very open. So you have to actually meet them at least once a week or 2 times a week to talk. And you have to, well, what I did was I go traveling with them, or it's not company trip, it's private.
Privately.
And also you kind of try to see what they're feeling, what they're doing, or you even play the game with them, and you understand their personality. And I think many companies here in Japan are lacking those. They employ some employees, but they don't really look into their personal life or personal opinions. So
that's interesting because for a lot of recent research is showing that the younger generation, no thank you to the company trip with my colleagues. I don't want to do that. No thank you to drinks after work with the boss. Don't want to do that. No thank you to golf on my Saturdays. Don't want to do that either. And the younger generation are much more focused on their life, and they don't see that company, my personal life integration of any interest to them. But what you're talking about, though, is actually spending a lot of private time together as well as work time. So how does that fit in with this sort of what seems to be a trend away from that?
Because we don't have a boss mindset. Because we are not boss. We are equal to everyone.
So you don't have a boss mindset. Why? You're the founder. It's your dough. It's your money. You know, it's your livelihood. How do you get around not having a boss mindset then?
Because we run the company as we are treating the family. So you don't really call your maybe son employee, right? So we feel like there's a family where we have to protect them. And if we are going to the trip or if we're having dinner together, we're talking honestly. So they don't really feel that is a work.
Okay.
And I think most of the companies force employee to join the trip.
Right.
But we just invite individually. Oh, you want to go for Atami tomorrow? Something like this.
Right, okay.
It's very different.
Right.
It's not like, May 26th, we are going to Atami with 20 employees.
Right.
And you have to treat your boss some of the very good manner. It's very tiring.
Right, so it's very tiring. So you're doing something, now just as a matter of interest, are all of the staff female or you have some male?
Male and female.
Male and female. So is there any difference there in terms of getting close to people? Because, as you say, Japanese can be very reserved. They can be very private. They don't share much. Do you find it easier to connect with females because you're a female compared to males, or the other way around, or does it matter as person by person?
It's I would say person by person. But sometimes males are more logical.
Ah, okay.
So it's easier to talk to them.
Yes.
But to get connected is a little bit different story.
So
harder. I think it's person by person.
So in terms of leadership, it's sounds like a very flat structure, not a lot of hierarchy. You're trying to be at a very family style of business. So in terms of, you said before about trying to find the spark of interest within that person to want to do that piece of work. How do you arrange that? How do you make it so that you can get a content of a job that's going to match that person to get that motivation?
They already have the specialty, to be honest. So we just arrange them. We coordinate. So I think we are the one who are like making one TV show where we are in the back side of the stage and we arrange them.
Right.
So they have specialty already.
Right. So were you married when you started the company, or did you get married after you started the company?
After.
After. So was there a difference between when you were single running the company in terms of how the employees looked at you and after you got married?
Yes, it's different.
What was different?
Well, they look at us as one part of the company, and some of them really trust my husband, some of them trust myself. So we have like a double trust from people around us, and we have different, of course, skill sets. For example, I'm good at maybe talking in public, PR, and marketing, and also talking to some of the CEOs of the companies. And my husband is like, he's really good at looking at management of the company and talking to CEO as well as maybe, well, he says he's not good at talking in public, but I don't think so, but he says so. And he's in sales side, and I'm in more like marketing side. And I also look at accounting. We also have like one team member that can take care of the accounting. I also look at accounting and stuff and the legal thing. So
the other reason I ask you about the sort of pre-marriage, post-marriage is because for women in particular, I think there's certain degrees of difficulty in dealing with male employees that men don't necessarily have, I guess.
Yes.
Or maybe they do from a different angle. But, you know, if I'm a male employee and I'm working with you in this very close family-style relationship, and you invite me to go to Atami, to a hot spring with you, I might misinterpret what that message actually is. And I might think there's a romantic connection going to be happening here with my boss, and I may not understand your intention. So, you know, or maybe it actually flips around for men too. If I invited a female employee of mine, hey, let's go to Atami to a hot spring together, she might be thinking, hang on a minute, I don't think I want to do that with you.
Right.
So how did you get around that little bit of maybe misconception about what's actually going on here?
Normally, I go with my husband as well.
Oh, okay.
So
right.
that's a little bit different from
This is even before you were married?
Yeah, even before.
Right, okay.
So
okay.
it's a little bit different from maybe other female founders or
right.
other cases you're talking about.
Right.
If I were just the female founder without husband
yes.
running the company together,
yes.
I would just invite them for like dinner.
Okay.
Maybe not for traveling alone,
right.
but maybe or invite other employee, not just two.
Just not one person, yeah.
Yes, to avoid misunderstanding.
Yeah, because I'm sure that could come up.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. So in terms of, you talked before about getting the right match between the person mm-hmm. and the job, so there's high engagement, mm-hmm. that's good. And I'm guessing that as a relatively small-scale company, mm-hmm. probably people have to do many things in the company, more than just their speciality. Mm-hmm. Is that an issue that people are thinking, hang on a minute, I'm doing this, mm-hmm. And you want me to do this as well? I'm not really skilled at that. That's not really my area. Why should I do that? Because in my experience, Japanese people love to know the exact limits mm-hmm. of their responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I make the joke that, for many Japanese, they'd love to have their job description written on the back of a postage stamp to make it as absolutely mm-hmm. tiny and as small
right.
as possible. So how do you get around that? A small company need people to do many things to encourage them to take on things beyond their mm-hmm. area of speciality.
Actually, we don't force them.
Okay.
So they have specialty mm-hmm. and things we need is we normally try to bring other people
right.
or we arrange on our own.
Okay.
So they don't have to take care of any areas other
okay.
than their specialty,
right.
so they can focus on their specialty.
Right.
That's a little bit different from other company, I think,
okay.
other startups.
And so in that sense, one of the keys to getting innovation mm-hmm. from a team mm-hmm. is having that engagement. If someone's not engaged, mm-hmm. You're working for a big company, mm-hmm. right, and you're not engaged, you actually don't care to make the systems better or to improve the technology. You just don't mm-hmm. care. You mm-hmm. just pick up your salary, go home, uh-huh. no motivation. But if you are motivated, if you are
yes.
engaged, then it's easier to have people be thinking,
yes.
how can we make this better? How can we something really innovative?
Yes.
How do you tap into that creativity that's potentially there in the team?
Actually, they talk about it too. So team brings some of the ideas and just talk to us like this might be better.
So they're suggesting to you ideas.
Yes, sometimes.
And why are they feeling they're able to do that? What makes it? Because for some cases, people, I can't really talk to the boss there. It's going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. I'll just forget it. There must be something going on there. They feel that they can be open with you. They can suggest things to you. Mm-hmm. How is that working?
Because we don't look at like them as employee, like I said.
So it's a very flat.
It's very flat. So they want actually, if they have any idea, mm-hmm.
Maybe
while we are going somewhere, even like a day car trip, mm-hmm. we talk. Maybe like this could be maybe used for our business idea, or what do you think?
Right.
And then they answer their opinion, and that could be innovation. And I think innovation doesn't happen sometimes like sitting on the desk and doing one routine.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to experience something new environment, maybe different atmosphere from the other than company office. And then the innovation could happen while you're talking to some of the people that might have some idea but can't say, or accidentally you find some of the really beautiful spot and you have time to relax and think. Then maybe innovation could happen. So this is what we think the innovation actually happens.
So are you actually manufacturing these chances to get that innovation, or you're doing it for another reason? For example, are you thinking, okay, we should go to Atami today and we'll go and have, you know, a nice hot bath and have a nice lunch, and that'll help to get people to bond with me and with each other, and maybe it'll get some innovation going in the team. Are you thinking consciously like that, or it's happening by chance, or it's happening by accident? Is it by design or by accident that these situations are coming up?
You can design too.
But are you designing it, or is it just something you're not thinking? It just turns up?
Sometimes I design, sometimes I don't.
Okay, right.
So it's depending
so you actually
on what
have in your mind, okay, I need to get some ideas going here. Let me create a situation
sometimes
where people can actually be innovative.
It could be just dinner at home.
Okay.
And we talk about things, or we actually start probably developing VR software. So we have actually the current latest VR system in our house. So we invite people and we say, would you like to experience? And they experience. And they might talk about something different from their specialty or different perspective. And that could lead to innovation. This is that simple.
Okay. Very good. And so that's a way of getting things. And I guess, you know, the other big thing in Japan too, I think, is trust. And you mentioned before the Japanese are quite reserved. And I often think, maybe it's because I'm a foreigner, I don't know. Maybe it's language, I don't know. But I often think that in Japan, the boss is usually the last person to find out what's going on with people's lives. Like you find out that so-and-so got married, you know. They never tell you they're getting married. They never tell you they've even got anybody in their life. They keep it all very secret. And then suddenly, oh, yeah, I got married, you know. You have no idea that happens. And so how do you work on building up that trust so that people are happy to share what's going on in their lives, to build that tight relationship?
I think the time you consume with a person actually is equals to your trust.
Okay.
Is one thing you can do for Japanese, because many Japanese believe that if you spend more time, you have more bond.
Right.
That's one of the way to get trust for
so
non-Japanese.
How does that work for busy people? You know, if you've got, you know, hundreds of emails a day, you've got lots of meetings on, you've got lots of things to do. How do you find the time to have that connection, individual connection with the team?
So if they're working like even like on weekends, they have hobby.
Okay.
For sure.
Yep.
I only know several people that doesn't have any hobby, but except those people, I think single person should have at least one hobby.
Okay.
And you can do the hobby together. That's very easy.
Okay. Right.
Because if you're invited to go fishing, if you like fishing, and if you're really, really like keen on fishing and go on weekends to all the fishing spots, you can just say, can I join you?
Right.
Because I do fishing too. I have better maybe fishing lot I can lend to you.
Right.
That's a good way to build trust.
To do.
And they do fishing anyway.
So, you know, how do you handle mistakes in the company? Because someone I was talking to last night was saying that he's actually an Englishman, been in Japan a long time, Japanese wife, the usual thing like me. And so he was saying that when he's in cabs, these days all the cabs on the back seats have these little screens, and they're playing all of these different commercials. A lot of them are for tech solutions for HR and this type of thing. And often the portrayal is the boss screaming at someone, and you know, then they have to get the tech solution to make the boss happy. Or often I'm talking to Japanese team members about previous experiences in companies or Japanese people in general. And a lot of them, you know, they talk about harassment. We talk about harassment, power harassment today, and they say,
Right.
geez, that's nothing. You know, when I joined my company, if I made a mistake, my boss would be screaming at me in front of everybody. One boss threw an ashtray at my head back in the days when there were ashtrays in the office room.
Right.
So you have this sort of thing in Japan of no errors, no mistakes, no defects, and bosses, you know, really yelling and scolding you publicly if you make a mistake. So there's that part of Japan. I think it's changing. But in terms of your company, when people make mistakes, make errors, how do you deal with that?
If people make mistakes or errors, we don't really scold, or I think that really makes it worse. That's not the best solution. So
what is the best solution?
Best solution is to talk to them and
To
figure
talk
out
to them?
figure out what was the initial starting point of the mistake. That's the best, because you need to prevent a mistake for future. And to prevent a mistake, you have to figure out what was the cause of the mistake.
Right.
And to talk to them actually solves a lot of mistakes.
Right.
And you can actually make a strategy how to apologize for the client too, if that client is involved.
Right.
So it's better to talk to them rather than scolding, because scolding doesn't make any difference.
No, that's true. One thing too, I used to work in banking, and banking is a highly regulated industry. I was in retail banking. So we would have problems with some of the banking staff not following the regulations, not following the guidelines. And banking is very, very, very detailed on procedure.
Yes.
And the biggest problem wasn't the making of the mistake.
Yeah.
They didn't follow a particular procedure. That wasn't the problem. It was hiding the problem that was the issue. And that would get people fired. And it was very hard to get people to understand they were better to bring the mistake or the lack of procedure up early. And yes, maybe there's some small punishment about that, perhaps, than hiding it, because that sort of balloons into a huge problem and that loses your job. So how do you get around that to help people feel comfortable to say, hey, listen, I made a mistake, as opposed to it becomes obvious there's been a mistake and they have not mentioned it?
Normally, I feel like many of the people don't learn from the mistake. Learn just from mistake.
Oh, they only learn through making mistakes.
Through making mistake. So what I can suggest is probably show them the cases. Some of the cases, maybe mistake, it was very small, so they couldn't really get, company didn't fire them, but some of the mistakes were too big because it took 10 months to discover, for example.
Right.
Then, company had no choice but to fire them.
Yes.
So you could just show them the cases and show them that this kind of mistake happens. Well, sometimes company also hide mistakes, right, from employees, but they should be opened also. There was a mistakes.
Yes.
But this kind of mistake happens often or sometimes.
So are you able to show your mistakes to the team? For example, when you're the boss, and I know you've got a very flat hierarchy in your company, but sometimes, you know, the boss's ego or the boss thinks about their position and, you know, you make a mistake or you choose the wrong direction or you start a project and it fails and, you know, often bosses look for other people to blame them for the mistake and they don't want to take any responsibility at all. How about in your company? How open are you to telling people, you know what, I got that completely wrong, that was a mistake, that's all on me. How are you for doing that?
We normally take responsibility, so everything happened is our fault. And maybe some people within my team might make mistake and they don't admit the mistake, or they admit the mistake, says, I'm sorry, it's my fault, but that's actually our fault because we didn't really have enough talk to take a lead, or maybe we could not do anything to prevent a mistake beforehand. We could have maybe if we talk to them. So it's all our fault. That's our concept. or our mindset. So it's very different from maybe company boss that's trying to hide. So we are open, and they are open, and we don't blame them. It's we also take responsibility. So people talk to us. They don't really hide anything.
Don't have fear. So you also have a non-profit that you've created as well. Can you talk about why you started StartUp Lady? What is StartUp Lady, and why did you create StartUp Lady as a non-profit?
So what is StartUp Lady? We are a female entrepreneur community where actually we believe all the female founders or non-binary could have financial independence and success in business or their career, their life. That's our belief. That's a very strong belief. But the reason we made StartUp Lady is that we are not trying to exclude men. We actually wanted to include men to work together with female founders to make Japan better. I cannot say in a better words, but to work with them means you have to have like a better understanding. Men and women are different to begin with, of course. But if you try to see the working style, thinking style, maybe work together to understand each like good parts and try to integrate that good parts to the business, you can accelerate your business. You don't need to do it alone.
Right. So was the community of just people you knew, and you said, you know what, I'm going to create StartUp Lady and please help me. Was that how it worked, or did you create StartUp Lady and then you found people, or how did that come together?
Actually, I have 4 co-founders for StartUp Lady, and many of them are not Japanese or Japanese but born abroad. And when I started my own company in 2015, I told you that there was a struggle. Like I couldn't really find good network or money or talking to people was very hard because I just started the company. So I decided to join some of the female founders community. But when I looked at them, there were only like a local Japanese community, and there weren't any community that's accepting people like me who used to live abroad, or people who are coming to Japan and trying to find the company or their own business. And especially female had a difficulty. So we decided to focus on female. But our concept was to first one was to show the role model to the market. So people see that the female can do more. And second of all, we thought it's better to maybe make it community, because just showing the role model can maybe help some people, but can't really bring people together. So the community helps people to find other C-level board members for their own company, or for them to learn or encourage each other or socialize and talk together. So what does StartUp Lady do? So you're the part of the education program that we are running. We have 2 programs.
I'll just explain that I did a sales and marketing session for some female entrepreneurs recently.
And thanks to you, and they learned a lot. So we are having an educational program for female entrepreneurs, which is called 60-day startup program challenge, where they learn for 60 days. It's actually a little bit intensive too, and they do pitch at the end to actually show their business idea to the market. And then they move on to 6 weeks, where they actually learn maybe basics of businesses, but more core from professional trainers or instructors that's been in the fields for a little while to understand.
The group that I was dealing with, we had a lady from near Boston. We had a lady from Mexico. We had a lady from Madagascar. You know, I was amazed. How on earth does StartUp Lady find these ladies all around the world like that? That's incredible to me.
Actually, there aren't many organizations that's helping, especially female, trying to do something in Japan or with Japan. And actually we have challengers that wasn't in the program joining from Europe as well.
As well, yeah.
So
Yeah.
very.
But how do they find Startup Lady? How do they become part of this organization?
We don't use much of the advertisements, paid advertisements, so it's mostly word of mouth.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. And our community, we have around 1,500 people now.
Okay.
And they just talk about us. They just spread about us to people who are maybe related to Japan or have interest in Japan. So actually word of mouth is very strong. And we also get some interviews from magazines and stuff.
It's very well organized, the way you do it. Congratulations on that. But I can also see this is going to take up a lot of time. So, you've got your own company. You're doing Internet of Things. You must be pretty busy there. How did you work out that, okay, it's worth my effort and time and energy to put it into a non-profit? Where's the connection for you as a businesswoman to get some benefit for your business from Startup Lady?
Well, maybe one thing I can talk about benefit would be only the PR part for my company. That's it. But I feel like helping like future female entrepreneurs. Well, of course, I have to be very successful to be more like a role model, or maybe can talk better. But I think like showing that there's a community where a lot of international females can get together to encourage each other, can support a lot of young generations. I feel like a lot of young generations now losing hope because of COVID or because of the society that having a lot of restrictions. But that restriction is it's a little bit changing now. And I feel like a lot of people, young people, some people are very motivated to do something, but there's no much safe community or the community that's maybe open to younger generations at this moment.
That's interesting. I think I haven't heard of too many organizations like yours before. So
even NPO, I actually want to put some effort to grow the community for the future.
Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. So if you were going to give some advice, they could be someone in Japan, they could be Japanese, they could be a foreigner, or they could be someone who's outside of Japan who wants to start up an operation in Japan. What would be some advice you'd have for them in terms of how to lead the organization in Japan?
The leading organization in Japan is a little bit hard, as I said, because it takes a lot of time to build trust. But there's a lot of ways to build trust, and one way is communication. And I feel like a lot of, recently there are a lot of companies dealing with engineers, and many of the engineers are lacking to communicate with people. They don't have that knowledge much. So what you can do is talk to them, understand them, and try to maybe go eat or play or have fun together and
create a personal connection.
Exactly. And in Japan, that actually is one of the most important things to build a business and the trust. Because without personal connection, it's only the contract and the money is the thing that's bonding them. And it's very, very, very thin bond. It doesn't work when there's more, like other company trying to pay more. Or it doesn't work when the contract is over. But personal connection lasts
Okay.
So talking about business in Japan or building company in Japan, I would recommend you to make the more personal connections to company presidents or employees of your company or people around you, and make more network to people around you that's supporting you. And we have the saying that you should actually think about, well, it's just not just us, maybe for everyone, to think about your resource all the time. The resource could be your iPad that you have, or that could be your phone that you own, or anything you have, the resource, right? Or people around you is resource. And sometimes people don't really look at the people around you and think that's a resource. But everyone around you could be resource for the business, right? So the person might have this talent, but I might not really remember. So let me contact him and make sure.
So what you're saying is to try and look for communities to join, look to create a big network so you can draw on expertise, experience and assistance from other people beyond what you're just doing yourself. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe one other piece of advice for someone. What else in terms of things they should be thinking about?
So starting business in Japan, people try to look at the niche area, but you sometimes don't really have the idea or don't know how to start. But looking at Japanese business, more businesses are created maybe a few years after the one existing business is created in abroad. So if you look at the business already existing abroad and maybe see the business match to Japan and bring it to this market, that might work.
Okay.
A lot of businesses actually happened after the Japanese found the business in abroad, and they just brought it and applied to Japanese markets.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Myself, I have a really big dream. First one is to change education of Japan. But I'm not talking about academic parts. It's very difficult to change. But maybe people can start learning and growing maybe during their lifetime. And I feel like most of people in Japan are lacking the motivation, or they're not eager to learn anything after they start their career. So I feel like many people can recreate their own learning style or try to learn something maybe not academic, but with their own interest, and keep learning life, like during their whole life. That's the education, I would probably call it. So I want to change
StartUp Lady has got a function of that, hasn't it, of education?
That's one part. And another one is we want people to, I also want people to open up to the world. So Japanese people, not just opening up, like maybe look at the world and, well, they don't need to change everything. Japan has very beautiful, good parts and a very, very nice culture that we have. I really respect Japanese culture. So not just, taking everything from abroad and changing Japan, but also people can look at there's a differences. There's some cultural difference, maybe language difference, the way to behave, and some regulation in abroad is maybe good to take a look. But many people don't really look at the world because of the language or because of some environment that they have. But my goal is to make people understand different culture and be able to maybe take some good maybe parts from different culture, different background of people. I wouldn't say this relates to people's equality. It's too big, but maybe changing Japanese international mindset is maybe one of the goals that I can achieve.
Right.
So
well, good luck.
yes.
Good luck with that. That's a big task, a worthy task.
Two major goals that I have in my own maybe life.
Okay.
Through lifetime, I want to achieve that goal.
All right. Well, I hope that goes well for you. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
So it's been fascinating to see what Suzuki-san has done as a founder and starting her businesses and starting an NPO. Startup Lady as well, and being associated with that myself a little bit anyway, to get some glimpse into what is happening amongst particularly young female entrepreneurs in Japan. So join us again for the next episode of Japan's top business interviews.